we will let you know how you have a chance to win a Steam key for the Solforge Fusion beta.
Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. Casey, Kid, and Core here. We'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level. Everyone, welcome back. Last week we did our digital application walkthrough. We played the deck. The dinos came out swinging. I tried to come back on the last minute with that Oratech deck. Got a pretty big punch in, but wasn't enough to seal the deal. Greg took it away. But we kind of did that in preparation for an event we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, Greg, you want to break down some upcoming events?
Yeah, we got some upcoming in-person tournaments. The first one is happening on March 23rd in Lincoln, Nebraska. So Brandon Balls is hosting this, and the Upside Down on Discord. And this is going to be a sealed event at the Great Plains Game Festival, again located in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now the event itself is free. You'll get a sealed deck out of it, and he says there'll be some cool prizes. There is an entry fee into the convention. I believe it is a 3-day convention, and that entry fee will cover you for all 3 days. And then I will also be making my way up to that. I'll be driving up there. That's the plan. So hopefully if anybody goes out there, it'd be awesome to catch up and meet anybody that's also going. The next event is FuseFest 2 storyline event in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now this is going to be the big social event. Should be a lot of fun. I missed out on the first one, and this is going to be on April 27th. So hopefully before the event, I believe on Friday, Ryan, you're trying to get together a lot of people, kind of do some kind of dinner meet and greet.
Yeah, if we can. When we go to a lot of these larger conventions, we always try to, for anyone that comes the night before, just get together, and do the breaking of bread or however it is. Meet up, have some drinks. We're tentatively looking at some places right now. If you're interested in that, there is a channel in the Stoneblade Discord that's all about coordinating just for that social aspect of the game, so that we can meet up before the event really starts the next day.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm planning or trying to drive up Thursday, and then I'll just work from Minnesota on Fridays, and then be available in the evening. So that's what I'll be looking at. If that fails, I'll just be driving up Friday morning to get there in time. So
Awesome.
Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. But then that brings us into past week's events, and that was the digital client Kickstarter exclusive event. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. My daughter's birthday party, we were doing that day at the zoo. So, but I was following along. Ryan, I see that you did some work at that tournament. What were your thoughts on the tournament? How did it go? And then we can get down into the deck discussions.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people had chances to meet a lot of new people. And there's a couple of things about the event. Now that we're on the digital application, that really reinforces the capability to have games without voice communications. And so 3 of my 5 games were without any voice communications whatsoever. I thought that would have led to a lot of pairing issues. And, Greg, you and I kind of talked about that beforehand. Like, we have to become Steam friends to pair up for the tournament now. And we thought that could cause a lot of issues. So I thought about that. And as soon as people started getting on the Discord, I posted out, hey, I'm going to put my Steam friend code as my server's name. So it's going to be Casey Kid - Steam friend code. And then I kind of took some snippets of me doing it in Steam and kind of the process, and just kind of posted them in there. And I think a lot of people jumped on board, which was awesome to see. And I don't know if that's the only thing that alleviated, obviously, but I do think it helped immensely. And I'm quite certain Stoneblade is going to get a matchmaking system in place for tournaments specifically down the line, right? We're in beta. Mm-hmm. But it went a lot smoother than I thought it would go.
Nice. Yeah, they do have that tournament button that's, de-highlighted right now, so they definitely look like they're working towards that. And I was kind of keeping tabs throughout it, and I also noticed in the Discord, I thought it was a good touch. I don't know if you had initiated this or somebody else did, but you'd put your name as Casey Kid Das and then what looked to be your Steam ID as your Discord name in that channel as well.
Yep, yeah, that was the Steam friend code that I
Yep.
was talking about there, which like I said, 3 of my games had no voice communications whatsoever. But I think that those players were still monitoring Discord, and they would see that I jumped to the table we're assigned to, and then very shortly after, I would get a ping in Steam, friend request initiated. I would accept, and it matched up, and we played and went from there. So it worked out, and it worked out pretty well. I did get to play. My first match was against a player who was at Gen Con, Greg. We were at Gen Con. They had played in the storyline event. I don't think we met. It was Christina. I don't think we met her while we were down there, but it's just kind of these like serendipitous moments, right? Hey, we were both at the same tournament, Gen Con. Didn't play a match there, didn't get to say hello, but here we are now. We get to play a match. So that was a really cool way to start the event for me, I think.
Nice.
The other touch I really loved about this tournament, actually, was even if you brought a silver deck or a bronze deck, you weren't going to get that buy, right? The point of this tournament was to play matches, to have fun playing matches, and enjoy the application. And then the big part is, right, test the application. You're not going to do that right off the bat with buys. At some point, they're going to have to implement buys and test that out, but we're not there yet, and the fact that they implemented the no buys, I just think was a nice touch as well.
Yeah, so you and Cade both went undefeated in the tournament. You guys played 5 rounds total, and so congrats to both of you doing that. It sounds like you guys will be immortalized in some way in the game, so that's awesome.
Yes, we'll see exactly how that takes form. So before the event started, they did say if any player goes undefeated, their name or their persona or some way, shape, or form, they're going to get immortalized in the client. Have some ideas of what that is, just kind of behind the scenes, but we'll see how that fleshes out. And we're going to jump into Cade's deck, the Puffin Man, as well as mine, break down through those. But I would say also, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 4-0 players. So there was the chance potentially that there would have been another 5-0. It just didn't work out that way through pairings. And so we ended up with 2.
2. Nice. Yeah, so we look at these decks and then, kind of a little bit of foreshadowing as well on the next event we're going to talk about. But we see the Necrium, Utera, kind of life gain, big bodies kind of reign supreme here. And what I like about Cade's deck is not only is his spell list really good, he's also running a double glow hive, which is awesome, right? Like seeing those betrayers and doubling up always is a lot of fun. And it works really well in his deck with the different life gain options that he has, right? So again, looking similar to your Cersei, right? I assume he's running Cersei in this. You can see that you can run these decks and be very effective in them and not necessarily have to have the most, powerful Cersei options, right? There's no AC commander on his, and for yours, it's level 2, right? So, and even the life drains in cycle 4 is usually not the best in this case. So again, it's a really powerful decks, halves driving this, and then he's piloting it very well. So again, going that life gain, big bodies, glow hive, siren, in his Necrium and the Utera, right? The vampiric helps gain life, triggering it. Soothing polymorpher has a swamp moss lurker to take advantage of those life gains. Spring dryad, more life gains. Dizzy Incison, Virix Embrace, Exras Will, taking advantage of that as well. Even Botanimate, I don't know if he'll actually be able to trigger that in this. There's one Spirit Portal Shade, probably not playing, so probably not necessarily triggering that unless he's also tossed out Elysian Rain to get that to trigger as well.
Yeah.
Nap Time has some life gain, and then he's just got some big bodies, right? So that's where we look for in Utera, being able to populate those, and even in his Necrium side, big bodies. I mean, Sigmund Freud's still a 5/4 off the gate with aggressive. Spite Hydra can get really big. the Hibernating Raptor, Shardplate Delver, Shifting Basher is really good. So really good spell list. Uses the life gain, tries to get board advantage, and then builds up that safety of health and just goes swinging big. But what are your thoughts on it? And then let's switch over to your deck. Your Gripple, well known. You've played in a lot of tournaments very effectively. So let's go over your deck again. It's been a long time since we've covered it.
Yeah, and one thing that most people, if you haven't been playing the game, I think my Gripple deck looks unassuming. Until you start to dig in and you see the life gain synergy, it is really expressive. But then there's also a thing that's underlying that a lot of people at first overlook, and that's very large stats in cycle 1. And I do think that's what Cade's deck does really well. Additionally, his level 1 stats are very high. You could look at the average above curve, and you're going to see that he's up there. That's the same exact thing with my deck. And what the intent of it is to do is that life gain is to meet all of your extra triggers and get free plays, free value, but it's also to build the buffer. But as you're doing that, you're steadily building a board state that is almost hard to come back from. And you do that through big statted creatures at the beginning of the game. Glowhive Siren is very, very important for this. Because as a 4-8, if you gain health, the next trigger, it could be a 6-8, it could be an 8-8. Typically, that's dealing with 2 of your opponent's plays for them to get rid of it. Not always if they Dreadbolt it or Disintegrate, but typically it's getting rid of 2 of their plays. Kindred Wartusk with the 7 health stat typically lets it survive a combat, and then I get enough health triggers to keep it along. The Soothing Ravager, it's a tricky self-solving puzzle that comes out as a 4-6, which isn't mind-blowing at level 1, but it is very solid and can stick around. Swamp Moss Lurker is typically a free 4-6, so it's doing a lot of those things. And when you look at Cade's deck, I think he has 4 life gain payoffs in the 2 Glowhives and the Swamp Moss Lurker and Zerath's Will, right? So there's 4 right there. Anytime he gains life with those things out on the board or in his hand, typically he can get value out of them. Yep. That's kind of what my deck is attempting to do also, is have those things that get value out of it. So I have the Siren, the Wartusk, and the Ravager, and the Lurker, which is 4 creatures alone with payoffs, and then Zerath's Will and Primal Surge up to 6 payoffs. So that's what these decks are trying to do if you're looking to build them, is get enough instances of life-gaining triggers so that you can consistently have them in hand and increase your life-gain payoffs as high as you can.
Yeah, and on your deck, and again, similar thing as you mentioned, right? It's the big bodies in turn 1 or cycle 1, right? It's you get board advantage really early, and it's hard to claw that back, especially when you're having to deal with big bodies constantly. And then the fact that you're gaining health to help trigger these other things are kind of this extra on top of that allows you to be aggressive and being willing to be able to be like, well, I'll just get punched for 8 because I just gained 10. That allows me to just even more push board control and advantage. So it does it really well. And again, like when you're looking at it, you're like, well, the Cersei's only got 8 Army Commander 2, right? It's got Life Chain 3 I like, and then Soul Siphon Cycle 4. I actually don't mind Soul Siphon Cycle 4. It can be a game ender, right? That if you able to just punch through, you just smash somebody. But again, you're not seeing AC3 or AC4, right? It's what people are looking for. Doesn't have Death Touch. But you can still make these decks work. And again, you're not seeing. You do have Forge Seal in here, which is not necessarily the greatest, right? When it's in this style of deck, right? You rather have Manus, but you don't see a Manus, right? You don't see Krogius. You do have a Shambling Harvester, but in my experiences playing you, it's not used very often. It doesn't necessarily work as well with this deck as others. There's no Dark Heart, so. This is a style of deck that I think a lot of people may have and not necessarily realize the potential that they have.
Yeah, I do love that you bring up the Forge Seal Mantis, like the Puffin Man Cage. He doesn't have either one of those. I have Forge Seal, and that's a trap in this deck. If I'm playing Forge Seal, something has gone seriously south. Because Army Commander at level 2, although I don't hate it, I'm never going to use it twice in a game, especially at the expense of a card. It can be used to cheat up Swamp Moss Lurker when I've lost health early and things like that, so it's got its value. And then, yeah, the Shambling Harvester. When I play this deck, most people look at that, and that's what one of their most worried about cards is initially. And the only time I'm playing that, and be aware of it, like if you play against this deck, or against a deck where you see a Shambler that seems unassuming, but there's a Kindred out there, that's when you got to be aware. If I have the ability to throw down a Shambling Harvester off Forge, and then like follow that up with a Kindred War Tusk, drop my level 3 life drain, and then as Wrath's Will kind of add to the board and start that Kindred War Tusk proc it up, that's when they can get out of hand. So, but oftentimes with the sheer amounts of removal in most seriously competitive decks, I can't rely on the Kindred War Tusk being the one big thing. So that's why I don't lean into the Shambler as much as some others might. So just some thought process there. One other thing I did want to mention, Greg. One thing that I do think allowed these decks to maybe not guarantee themselves a spot at the top, but really increase their chances, was that right now in the digital application, Soulbinds aren't working. So they get a transform one time and they don't get a transform again. So RSEs, most people didn't bring a Rumble Spark deck because they knew they would only get the one-time value out of it. And then Army Commander at level 4, when activated more than once, seems to have a chance to crash the client. So a lot of people also opted to not bring that. So that just kind of paved the way, I think, for a very consistently powerful set of decks, which is life gain synergy.
Yeah, and I think even in the environments with those decks, I think your in K's deck and both of your abilities to pilot those decks still would have done well, and we still could have seen these results. So I think these decks still are worth, even with those considered, like these are still very good examples of things to look for in building a Nectar Mutera deck, and a competitive one at that.
Absolutely, 100% agree. With this deck, I've thrashed Rumble Sparks, I've thrashed Kroguses, but it's a small thing that increased the chances in otherwise consistent decks. Mm-hmm. So I have to throw it out there that did, I think, assisted. But yeah. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to lead into the next event. There's 2 cards in your deck we can kind of talk about, and we'll go into it in another deck as well, because it's just interesting, the 2 pieces. But that's in the next event we're going to talk about, which why don't you lead us into that one?
Yeah, so this was kind of funny. After the digital client event, there was a lot of people hanging around, and some people just said, I played 5 games of Solforge Fusion. I haven't had enough. I need to play some more. And just the amount of people active in the queue and everything like that was pretty amazing. I was, playing a couple games here and there, but then I would jump out and watch a Netflix show, come back, and see just people were still going at it in the queues. And so Sam Nathas, Forge Guardian, jumped in and said, hey, there's so many people online. Who wants to run another tournament in the application? And quite a few people jumped on. I looked at it pretty last minute. I saw an odd number, and I think it was like at 9. So it was like 10 minutes left or something. I was like, hey, I'll jump in. Moved it up to 10, and within those last 10 minutes, even 2 more jumped in. So
nice.
12 more people playing 3 more rounds right after this 5-round tournament because they just enjoyed it so much. So that was great. I wanted to point that out. And, obviously Sam Nathas is an amazing member of the community, jumped in and acted and wrangled us all together to play some more. And this was a part of his circuit also. He added it in there so you could get points. I was a little sad to enter because I was last in the rankings of all the players that have ever done the circuit. I had only had a chance to get in on one of his tournaments before and went 0-3, which was awesome. And I was last with like 1.2 point. I was kind of proud of that. But so I jumped in, and we had quite a few good players too. It's very solid players that were hanging around. And then some of the newer players that we're starting to recognize their names, right? Like Ithai, Solmir's son, seatless, these new players that are starting to become staples of the online community. And then we even had, Josh jumped in and played with the Aloyan Tempest starter, which was awesome to see. And that's the one most of us agree out of all the starter decks. That's a decent pairing. So
Nice.
So it ended
Yeah.
up.
So
I went 3-0, and Nate the weekend went 3-0 as well. And then we ended up playing our top cut, I think, last night, and he beat up on me pretty hard. But yeah, we'll jump in, and if you have any comments on the event, shoot for it, or just take Nate's deck away for us, Greg.
yeah, before we get into that, for those that have stuck around this long, wait till the very end of the deck breakdowns, and we will let you know how you have a chance to win a Steam key for the Solforge Fusion beta. And so if you already have one, and you know someone that you want to give it to, you can still join in to do it. If you want to just answer the question but you don't want the key, just let us know in the comment that you don't need the key. But we will take all the results in Monday at noon, and we'll then randomize who we'll send the key out to. So we'll try to reach out to you if you want to put your we'll get to the details in that, but stick around. We'll go through these decks, and then we'll go how you have a chance to win a beta key. So yeah, Ryan, you were saying let's break down the decks.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing up the key again. You want to break down weekend's deck here?
Yeah, so we'll go over weekend. Weekend, you guys ended up playing, and after the tournament was done, when you guys had time to, and came out on top using Necrom, Utera kind of life gain deck as well. And again, we're seeing some of these things where you don't have to have the most perfect Cersei. He's got Soul Siphon at level 2. A lot of people don't like that. It works in some decks. I think it can work in this deck. I have a deck that I like it at. Then Life Drain, and then Death Touch. And again, looking at the deck list, we're seeing the Glowhive Siren, Spring Dryad, Swamp Moss Lurker. Also has a Taliesin on there. That's a little bit different. And then his purple is going to be a little different as well. It's probably not leaning as much into the life gain, running more into utility and taking people out, essentially, some removal.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the Blight Witch for spells, for spell lists. Cutthroat Shambler. Again, it's got removal in there. Shambler triggering. It's probably using that every chance that he gets. And then just some Fraud, Slime, Zemus, Mobia, just some bigger bodies there. And then Necrovive, again, some removal, not necessarily hard. It is sacrifice, but it's in there. Cersei's Call is good. Extra's Will, those help really well with the Shambler. So, and then putting it in there. And then looking specifically at the green list, I mean, we got Ferocious Mantis. We kind of talked about that as well. It's a really good card. Pairs well with the Soul Siphon. You can just pop it, activate it, move that 5/5 over to somebody else, killing the Mantis. And then gets that Mantis rolling for Life Drain and Death Touch, which are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Glowhive Siren, Shardplate Delver. I like the Shardplate Delver. It's just a big body with Breakthrough, 5/6 to start. You can get it bigger if you have guys available, which this deck potentially could have with Cersei's Call and Vurik's Embrace. Spring Dryads, always a solid card. Swamp Moss Lurker, Taliesin, and then Groot. And what's interesting, again, it's kind of pairing back to your deck here. If you're making the call that says, well, Shardplate Delver and Groot are probably your two worse, and I'm going to use that lightly, worst cards in your deck, you got a really good deck.
Yeah, using that lightly.
Because I like both of those cards. I know you're a little bit more on Groot. I'm a little bit more on Delver.
But they both have their place, right? When you have them both situationally, oh man,
I'm not sad seeing either of those cards. And if you're trying to be like, well, what's the worst creature in that deck, and that's what you're going to, like, you've got a really good solid deck. So
yeah, they're like what top of the mid tier green cards, or like bottom of the top tier green cards. It's very difficult to peg
I'd
them
put
into a
them like
spot.
top mid. Yeah, Yeah, I mean they're solid,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not have as much utility or just sheer firepower, but like never sad to see those. So just interesting. I saw that on like both yours and weekends deck, and I was like, yeah, you're not in a bad place. So
Mm.
that's my thoughts on the deck. You played against it. What are some of your thoughts? And then if you could kind of go over your deck, because your deck's really interesting as well, a little bit different than what we've kind of gone over today.
Yeah. So your very very first call was like, you called out a couple big creatures, right? Venerable Slime, 7/5 with 1 armor. When I played weekend, this was his first play, and I didn't have an answer. So that's what we kind of talk about, those big statted creatures that can require you to do 2 plays worth of cards to get rid of, puts you at an advantage from the beginning of the game. So you nailed it right away. This was the first card he played, and I was playing catch up from that point on. We had some pretty good back and forth. I do love that the Betrayer Aegis Wings, this actually came into play in the game. So having that just the threat of mobility when you can get some big creatures with Glowhive Sirens, and the aforementioned Soul Siphon and stuff like that, Torgmite Guardians, all that stuff, it is a potential threat. So, and then the removal, Necrovive, he definitely got that online throughout the whole game, so it's very strong. Especially when it becomes free in cycles 2 and 3 potentially. And then the Cutthroat Shambler, had a lot of good answers, a lot of good removal, paired into a really solid other green deck. So I think you kind of said it, like this is a little less synergistic than the last 2 we went over. But what you have is a really strong green half that kind of takes care of a little bit of what it wants to do, and a little bit of what the Necrim half wants to do. But that Necrim half's giving you so much tools in addition. So, just a solid pairing from an obviously solid player.
Mm-hmm.
So, jump over to mine. This is one of my attempts at the Dark Forge Drain deck. It is Umbrook, which I think I've said many times before is probably my favorite pairing to play. Like, if I'm going to sit down and play, I'm always going to go for Utera Tempest. I just tend to enjoy the style of play that it gives. But what and really it's that spell slinging aspect, I think. Which comes with some what's the word I'm looking for? Not draw disparity, but draw requirements, right? So this deck can fly off the handle really quick, but you'll see that with Tempest. It's kind of a Tempest thing. When you have an Adept in your deck, you want to have a turn where you have 2 spells that just happen to line up, where you also want to use 2 spells. Or sometimes you'll play a spell disadvantageously, right? So this deck has 9 spells. It often gets that Adept off, but sometimes it doesn't. Same with your Anti-Elemist. You want to be able to replace something in the first cycle and not devalue yourself too much, but that gives you a free spell. And then the rest of these, the Spell Knight and the Summoning Warstoker with the Spell Sprite minion also kind of have some spell payoff synergy. Then up at our green half, this is really just mostly some big bodies with replacement synergy. So a lot of times what I'm doing is kind of putting a creature on the board, but then I hope it survives their turn, like let's say a Glowhive Siren survives their turn, and then I'm going to replace it with a Delver or a Splicer or a Mauler to kind of rejuvenate it back up to health and continue to get value out of it. But by keeping those things on the board, I'm also playing spells throughout the way. That's the hope. And so typically, Oros, it's the Dark Force Drain at cycle 2. This deck isn't as prolific as some of the Dark Forge Drains. I would call it probably right in the middle. Typically, by the time I'm activating this, you're getting about +8, +8 to +14, +14, somewhere in that exchange in cycle 2. And I'm slapping that onto one of the many breakthrough bodies that this deck has, and just hoping you can't compete, while I'm also, throwing the Flame Jets, the Lightning Sparks at the health if I can, Stone Skin for removal. So just kind of pairs in with a lot of good things. I enjoy playing this deck quite a bit. So what are your thoughts on it, Greg?
Yeah, what I like about this deck is the ability. For one, I like the Camouflage Basher. That's just awesome. I don't know if it's works for you or not. It's just I like when those go together on a body like that. But
Yeah,
what I do like about this deck is the ability to basically put breakthrough on a stick. And you
Mm-hmm.
have multiple ways of getting that off, either free or just as part of it, right? You got the Feral Instinct in there, Fit of Rage, works really well to pop those on there. And not to mention you have the Primal Surge in there, so if you have the life gain, that's another free card. Like, you just have a lot of ways of generating free spells or free plays, because even the Feral Instinct can pull that off if you dump it off onto one of your big bodies, right? You have big bodies in there, and getting that breakthrough on there is huge. Or popping that on there, then activating your Forge Seal, or or even using the Fit of Rage to do that, or your thing. So I like the way that you can your deck is almost always seems to have a way to threaten the Dark Forge terrain, and a lot of times players won't see it coming because it can come from your hand.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah, so the Camouflage Basher does see play. That's a Dark Forge Drain character. Camouflage Druid. If you see me play a 2/2 in cycle 3, there's probably a Forge Seal in hand, right? The Glowhive Siren doesn't have breakthrough, but that's where Feral Instinct, Fit of Rage come in. The Shardplate Delver's got it. Shroudthorn Splicer's got breakthrough. Pterodon Mauler's got breakthrough. So, yeah, you're 100% correct that that is the intent. Is all of these breakthrough are carriers, and it's going to come. I kudos to Weekend, of course, like phenomenal player, right? Cycle 3, I played a Camouflage Druid, and he goes, I don't think so. And so what I was really trying to do is just start the race. He had so much health, but like I had to start somewhere, and I was like, okay, here's the chance, and he shut it down pretty quick. He knew it was coming. But all of these kind of cards can kind of help sneak that punch in. So,
Nice.
So we talked about the key giveaway. We were supposed to talk about it earlier. I forgot. I'm glad you brought it back up. So we do have a key to give away, and we'll probably have some more to give away over the coming weeks. So just keep that in mind. If you don't win this week, stay tuned. But really, what we want to know, is what, if you took part in an event recently or this weekend, and you had a favorite moment, that's cool. Share that. If you haven't ever played online, if you just played at your kitchen table, share us a favorite Solforge Fusion moment from that. Or even if you haven't played, if you've never played the game, you're interested in playing, you could say, hey, I haven't played. This is what I'm interested in seeing. This is why I like the game. And you're in the drawing. If you have a code already, that's fine. Please go for it as well, as long as you have someone in mind that you think would enjoy the game. We just want the code to go out to someone who's going to play. That's the only requirement,
Yep.
Right? So drop a comment below. And I think, Greg, as you mentioned, if you don't want the code and you want to share a moment, please, we would love that too. Just say don't need the code at the end of it. And as soon as we have all the comments by Monday at noon, we'll do a random spin. We'll probably incorporate that in the next video, but we're going to try to get that code out to you a little sooner so you can start playing. So what I'll do is I'm going to let you know in the YouTube video comments. I'll respond to you saying you won. Reach out to me, and this is how you do it. And, it'll probably be it to our email, ForgebornFinishingSchool@gmail.com. Tell us the best way you want to be approached, or the code given to you. It could be via email, it could be via Discord. However, we'll make it work. We'll get it to you. So I think that's it. Greg, any parting thoughts?
No, I don't think I got it. I think we covered everything. Good discussion on the decks. Again, if anybody, ever has a topic that they want to cover, again, reach out to us, or if there's any deck or anything, yeah, we'd love to know your guys' thoughts. So that's all I got.
Cool. I did think of another thing. Very soon, we're going to have Nick Fletcher on the channel to talk about Set 3. He was the Set 3 developer. So he's going to share, just talk about Set 3, share some of his favorite cards, hopefully. Maybe give us some inside sneak peeks on what he thinks is going to be the most powerful, competitive play-wise. He probably won't, but we're going to try to pull that out of him. And then yeah, so expect that either next week or in 2 weeks. Not exactly sure when we squeeze it in, but that is on the docket. And then, yeah, that's it, Greg.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for attending this lesson of the Forgeborn Finishing School. If you like this video, please subscribe, comment, or consider donating to our Patreon account. We look forward to our next lesson.